At precisely 6:47 a.m., the Maplewood Neighborhood Watch chat buzzed to life with a sharp ping. Anyone still tucked in bed or stirring their morning coffee saw the message light up their phone screen. Some people need to control their dogs. The message read, firm and loaded with passive-aggressive energy. I've been woken up 3 times this week by that incessant barking. It was from Karen. Of course it was. Karen lived in the slate-blue house on the corner, the one with the motion sensor fairy lights and a sign on the lawn that read, Live, Laugh, Leash. She was the unofficial, self-declared authority on all things neighborhood-related. From grass length to garbage bins, Karen kept a mental log of everything and everyone. And right now, she had one target in her sights, the Gonzalez family and their friendly, oversized golden retriever, Max. Max was well known on the block, a golden fluffball of boundless enthusiasm who loved 3 things in life: chasing squirrels, belly rubs, and greeting every human being like they were royalty. To most neighbors, Max was harmless and sweet. A bit noisy at times, sure, but in an endearing way. However, for Karen, noise was noise, and she had 0 tolerance for it. The moment she pressed send, a few people in the group chat began nervously responding with vague emojis, some smiley faces, some eyes-wide reactions, and a couple thumbs up, from people who either agreed or just didn't want to get involved. But others, especially those who knew Max, felt a little irritated. Do we know for sure it's Max? Someone cautiously typed. But Karen didn't hesitate. Of course, it's Max. That golden menace barks every morning at the recycling truck. It's ridiculous. People work. Some of us need sleep. This is a community, not a dog park. What Karen didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that she was about to become the punchline of a neighborhood-wide joke, one that would soon go far beyond the quiet streets of Maplewood. At that exact same moment, a teenager from 2 doors down named Lila was checking her TikTok notifications. She had uploaded a short video the night before. Nothing special, just a clip she'd taken for laughs. In it, she'd caught the high-pitched, surreal sound of a dog howling like it was singing backup for a sci-fi movie soundtrack. The sound wasn't just a bark or a whimper. It was a full-blown, siren-like screech, rising and falling in such a precise mimic of a police car that at first, people thought it had been edited. But it wasn't. It was real. The dog in the video was Cupcake, Karen's prized white Pomeranian. Lila had captured the moment during her morning jog the day before. She'd paused her music when she heard what she assumed was a distant ambulance. Then she turned her head and saw Cupcake, perched dramatically on the windowsill of Karen's living room like a fuzzy gargoyle, her tiny mouth wide open, letting out an uncanny, bone-chilling howl that perfectly echoed the siren in the distance. Lila hadn't been able to stop laughing. It was so unexpected, so absurd. She uploaded it with the caption, "When your dog thinks it's a fire truck, dog soft tick-tock, dog siren howl," and went on with her day. But TikTok had other plans. The video had gained over 60,000 views overnight, and it was climbing fast. Comments poured in. Bro, this isn't a dog, it's a possessed air horn. She's not howling, she's auditioning for a horror film. Cupcake said, I am the emergency. People had started sharing it, remixing it, even adding voiceovers. There was one where someone edited in sirens responding to Cupcake's howl like she was part of a canine emergency response team. Another user added dramatic subtitles, pretending Cupcake was warning everyone of the apocalypse. A meme was born. Back in the group chat, no one had mentioned the video yet. Some had seen it, of course, and were putting the pieces together. But no one wanted to say the obvious, not just yet. It was too perfect. Karen, oblivious to the growing storm, sipped her tea smugly, proud of herself for finally speaking up. Cupcake sat nearby on a velvet cushion, licking her paw with royal disinterest. To Karen, her dog was practically a model citizen, refined, elegant, trained at the local obedience school, and dressed daily in little pastel outfits Karen ordered online. Karen often spoke about Cupcake like she was a gifted child. She only barks if there's something really wrong, Karen would insist. She's intuitive, sensitive, refined. So naturally, the thought that Cupcake might be the source of the neighborhood's early morning wailing didn't even cross her mind. As the morning sun rose over Maplewood, more neighbors began to stir. And as the neighborhood chat simmered, under the weight of unspoken irony, Cupcake, the tiny dog with the lungs of a soprano banshee, yawned delicately and curled back into a ball. Across the internet, her video continued to rise. People from halfway across the world were laughing at her howl, commenting in languages Karen couldn't speak, drawing fan art of a ghostly howling fluffball, and suggesting Cupcake be added to the next animated Pixar movie. It was only a matter of time before someone in the group chat brought it up. But for now, Karen was still the self-righteous whistleblower of the moment, clueless, caffeinated, and sitting right next to the true culprit. By the time the morning fog had burned off and the sun cast a warm glow over the sleepy cul-de-sac of Maplewood, the group chat had shifted from polite silence to mild chaos. What had started as Karen's firm complaint about a barking dog was now unraveling into something stranger, funnier, and far more ironic than anyone could have anticipated. It began with a single reply that carried the weight of playful suspicion. "Are you sure it's Max?" wrote Dennis, who lived across the street from both Karen and the Gonzalez family. "I swear I've heard something, not quite bark-like, coming from your direction, Karen." Karen's response was immediate, sharp, and indignant. "Of course, I'm sure. I have excellent hearing. Cupcake is trained. She's quiet. She doesn't make those kinds of noises. That wailing doesn't come from her. Please." But the group chat had already begun to fracture into factions. Those who had seen the now viral TikTok, and those who had not. And those who had seen it were struggling to contain themselves. No one wanted to be the first to drop the bombshell. There's a kind of neighborhood etiquette, even in digital spaces, and no one really wanted to poke the bear, or in this case, poke the Pomeranian's proud owner. Still, the pressure built with every passing minute. Dennis posted again. "Just saying, sounds travel weird around here. Might be worth checking. I heard something the other morning that sounded like a police siren being channeled through a kazoo." The message earned a dozen laughing reactions. Karen didn't flinch. "Sounds like someone's being dramatic," she typed, clearly irritated. "Cupcake is well behaved, unlike some dogs." That was when Sasha, a college student who lived 2 houses down and had a well-documented love of stirring the pot, finally said what everyone else was thinking. "Okay, but has anyone seen this yet?" she wrote, attaching the now famous TikTok link. The thumbnail showed a wide-eyed Pomeranian mid-howling, perched like a diva on a window ledge. The caption underneath read, "When you're small but you are the siren." Within seconds, the group chat exploded. "OMG, that's Cupcake. I've watched this 10 times. She's summoning demons. Karen, please explain this because I am crying. I knew that sound wasn't Max." Karen was silent for a full 5 minutes, which for her was a digital eternity. She finally responded with a terse, "That's a heavily edited video, probably AI, not funny." But it was funny, hilariously funny. The group chat was flooded with emojis, memes, and GIFs. Some people were laughing so hard they claimed to be crying. Others were now imitating Cupcake's now infamous howl. Someone even posted a screenshot of a remix video that featured Cupcake edited into a scene from Fast and Furious, howling as cars sped past her. Someone else had added her siren wail to a TikTok of a firefighter sliding down a pole. The video itself had grown in popularity exponentially. Lila, the original poster, had no idea it would blow up like this. Her phone buzzed nonstop with likes, comments, and new followers. She barely had time to process what was happening. People were begging her to record more of Siren Cake, a nickname that had started trending in the comments. Even people outside of Maplewood were getting involved now. A local radio station picked it up during their morning show and played the howl live on air, laughing hysterically between segments. "You guys have to hear this," the host said. "It's like a tiny ghost got stuck in a teapot and decided to start a band." By midday, the hashtag #JarsCupcake the Siren was trending locally. Fans had started speculating about her backstory. "Was she a fire truck in a past life?" one user wrote. "Is she warning us about something we can't hear?" asked another. Back in the group chat, Karen was now fully engaged in damage control mode. "This is slander," she wrote. "That video is obviously altered. Cupcake would never make that sound unless she was in distress. She's a very sensitive animal. That's not her normal behavior." But as luck, or cosmic justice, would have it, more videos began to surface. One neighbor had caught a short clip weeks ago and forgotten about it, but they shared it now. In it, Cupcake was seen reacting to an ambulance siren by raising her head and letting out a dramatic, high-pitched wail that startled the mailman walking past. Another video showed Cupcake howling in the background during a neighborhood barbecue, entirely unprompted, right in the middle of the national anthem. That one was particularly popular, and someone had already added slow motion and dramatic music. Karen, horrified, switched tactics. "This is being taken out of context. She has anxiety. You shouldn't be laughing at an anxious dog. It's cruel." But the tide had turned, and not in her favor. No one was being truly mean. At least, not yet. The tone remained mostly lighthearted. But Karen couldn't shake the feeling that the neighborhood was laughing at her, not with her. For someone so used to being in control of community matters, it felt like the ground beneath her had shifted. Still, a few neighbors tried to smooth things over. "I think Cupcake's adorable," typed Marsha from across the street. "Honestly, she's kind of amazing. Not every dog can harmonize with a fire truck. Maybe she's just gifted?" "Yeah," Dennis chimed in. "Might be time to lean into it. This could be her big break." Karen didn't respond immediately. She stared at her phone, then over at Cupcake, who was currently napping on a silk pillow shaped like a unicorn. Her tiny legs kicked slightly in her sleep, and she let out a soft, squeaky sigh, like a toy deflating. Karen sighed too, but deeper. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She had meant to call out the Gonzalez's barking dog, restore peace to the neighborhood, maybe even get a few thank you messages. Instead, her own dog had become a meme, a siren-wailing internet celebrity. And the thing was, Cupcake was kind of famous now. The views on the original video had passed 200,000. Dozens of fan-made remixes were circulating. Someone had drawn a cartoon version of Cupcake in a superhero cape with the words, "The Siren Avenger," a popular dog treat. Company had even commented on the video, "She's got lungs and looks. DM us for a collab?" Karen stared at the screen, the growing weight of reality settling in. Cupcake stirred, then let out a small, sleepy howl. Soft, but still unmistakably siren-like. Karen's face twitched. Maybe it was time to rethink things. It was just past 7 p.m. when the members of the Maplewood Book Club began arriving at Karen's house, each of them armed with a bottle of wine, a polite smile, and a barely restrained sense of anticipation. Technically, they were there to discuss this month's read, an 800-page historical romance that most had only skimmed, but that wasn't what had them practically buzzing with excitement. The real draw tonight was the unspoken promise of witnessing something far more entertaining than literary analysis. They had come to see Cupcake in action. By now, every member of the club had seen the TikTok. Some had even commented on it under fake usernames to avoid Karen's wrath. The video of Cupcake, the pristine white Pomeranian with the voice of a haunted kettle, had reached a level of internet infamy that was hard to ignore. And despite Karen's vehement denial in the group chat, none of the women could resist the lure of hearing the howl in person. Karen, as always, greeted her guests at the door with a wide, polished smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She wore a cashmere cardigan in soft lavender and had arranged her hair in perfect waves. She acted like nothing was different, like the whole internet hadn't just discovered her dog's secret talent. Wine in the kitchen, snacks on the coffee. "Table," she said, ushering them in with manicured hands. "And let's please stay focused tonight, ladies. This book is dense, but worth it." No one mentioned the video right away, but glances were exchanged and muffled giggles passed between sips of Chardonnay. They all noticed Cupcake immediately, snoozing on her throne-like dog bed beside the window, a tiny rhinestone tiara perched askew on her fluffy head. Karen had clearly made an effort to present her dog as the picture of dignity, as if to disprove the howling rumors through sheer aesthetic. Cupcake blinked at the guests, yawned daintily, and then settled back into her pillow, unaware of the scrutiny she was under. The book discussion began more or less. Karen tried valiantly to steer the conversation toward the protagonist's moral dilemmas, but her voice was competing with the undercurrent of suppressed laughter and the occasional wine-induced interruption. "I'm just saying," Marcia piped, up, swirling her glass. "If Cupcake really did make that sound, she'd have a better vocal range than half the singers on The Voice." Karen stiffened. "She doesn't make that sound." The video was taken at an unfortunate moment. She was startled. That's not how she normally... But just then, as if summoned by the gods of comedic timing, the distant whine of a fire truck siren began to rise in the distance. It was faint at first, barely noticeable over the chatter and clinking glasses, but it grew steadily louder as the truck sped down Maplewood's main street, lights flashing. Cupcake's ears twitched. Karen noticed. Her face froze. The room fell into a sudden loaded silence, and then, with operatic precision, Cupcake shot to her feet, scampered to the window like a fuzzy little missile, leapt onto the sill, and let out the sound that had made her famous. A high-pitched, soul-piercing howl that wavered in perfect sync with the siren outside. It wasn't just noise, it was music, if music were filtered through a banshee in a tutu. It started low and built upward into a crescendo, then fell again, looping like a ghost trapped in a musical limbo. Several of the women gasped. One dropped her wine glass. Someone snorted so hard they spilled brie on their blouse. Karen turned bright red. "Cupcake! Stop that! Down! No!" But Cupcake was possessed. Her tail stiffened, her head thrown back in pure expression, and she howled with the passion of a canine Pavarotti. The fire truck passed, its siren fading. Into the night, and slowly, very slowly, Cupcake's performance tapered off. She blinked once, hopped down gracefully, and trotted back to her bed as if nothing had happened. The room erupted into applause. "Oh. My God," Sasha wheezed, wiping tears from her eyes. "It's real. She actually does it." "I need a recording of that," someone said breathlessly. "I swear I felt that in my spine," added another. Karen stood frozen, her hands clenched at her sides. "She only does that when sirens..." "Pass," she muttered. "It's just a coincidence. She's sensitive to sound. Nothing more." But the moment had already broken whatever control Karen had tried to maintain over the narrative. Her living room, once the domain of polite conversation and curated floral centerpieces, had become a stage, and Cupcake had delivered a show-stopping solo. The book club was officially derailed. One of the guests, younger and tech-savvy, had discreetly filmed the whole thing on her phone. She showed it to a friend who laughed so hard she nearly choked on an olive. "I mean, you have to post this," she said. "I might," the woman whispered, grinning. "Or better, stitch it with the original TikTok. This is the sequel we've all been waiting for." Karen caught sight of the phone and bristled. "Please, this is my home. I don't want any more of these silly videos being shared around. It's not funny. Cupcake doesn't deserve to be mocked." But even Karen's words lacked the usual edge. The absurdity of it all was too powerful. Her carefully crafted reality had been cracked wide open, and behind the veneer of control and routine was a howling dog with impeccable timing, and a neighborhood that couldn't stop laughing. Still, Karen tried to salvage the night. She poured more wine, steered the conversation back to the book, and made a few pointed comments about online privacy. But the energy had shifted. Cupcake had stolen the spotlight, and no one could think about 18th century romance novels anymore. Guests left an hour later, still laughing, still rewatching the video on their phones. Cupcake lay sprawled out in the center of the room, exhausted from her brief but glorious performance. Karen sat stiffly in her favorite chair, staring into the middle distance, processing what had just happened. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, with a reluctant huff, she reached for her phone. She opened TikTok, searched for the original video, and scrolled through the comments. She expected mockery, but what she saw surprised her. People loved Cupcake. Not in a cruel way, but with genuine affection. They weren't laughing at her. Dog. They were celebrating her. Cupcake wasn't the punchline, she was the headliner. Karen stared at her screen, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. She looked over at Cupcake, who gave a lazy little yawn and rolled onto her back, belly exposed. Maybe she's got something, Karen murmured. The following weekend, the Maplewood Spring Fair kicked off with its usual flair: handmade crafts, rows of food trucks, kids' games with sticky-fingered prizes, and a band of retirees playing acoustic covers of pop songs with too much tambourine. The neighborhood turned out in full force, weaving between booths with sun hats and strollers, dogs on leashes and lemonades in hand. It was tradition, and it was cheerful, and it was, this year, unusually buzzing with expectation. Because this year, there was a new attraction on the flyer, added at the very bottom in bold Comic Sans. Special guest, Cupcake the Siren pup. Live performance at 2 p.m. main stage. No one was entirely sure how it happened. Rumor said the fair committee had reached out after the TikTok went viral. Another story claimed Karen had submitted a request herself, though she would never admit it. Either way, the poster was real. The event was scheduled, and Cupcake, Maplewood's most melodious mystery, was going public. At 1:45, a crowd was already forming around the main stage, a flatbed truck adorned with streamers and potted daisies. People fanned themselves in the spring heat and leaned eagerly forward, phones already recording. Children craned their necks. Teens giggled behind sunglasses. A few brought homemade signs: Cupcake for President and Siren Pup Rocks. One particularly committed fan wore a t-shirt that read, "I survived the howl." Karen stood behind the stage with Cupcake in her arms, both of them dressed for the occasion. Karen wore a mint green pantsuit that screamed casual authority. Cupcake, fluffier than ever, sported a tiny sequined cape and a bow in her fur, shaped like a musical note. Her usual rhinestone collar had been swapped out for a new one that sparkled with little fire truck charms. She looked absurd. She looked iconic. Karen glanced down at her. "You ready, little diva?" she whispered. Cupcake blinked up at her, then let out a soft, polite yip. It was strange, the transformation Karen had undergone over the past week. She had fought the truth at first, resisted the laughter, and deflected the attention. But somewhere between the TikTok remixes, the enthusiastic DMs, and the book club disaster turned triumph, she had made a decision. If the world was going to laugh, it might as well be on her terms. And if her dog was going to howl like a dying opera singer, they were going to make it a performance. At exactly 2:00, a volunteer tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, and pups," she announced, "we're thrilled to welcome the one and only, the internet's newest star. Give it a... Up for Cupcake the Siren!" The applause was immediate and thunderous. Karen stepped up onto the stage, heels clicking, and raised one hand like a seasoned performer. She didn't speak. She simply walked to center stage, set Cupcake gently down on a plush little podium, and gave her a treat. Then she waited. At first, nothing happened. The crowd hushed. Cupcake blinked, tilted her head, and licked her lips. Then, as if on cue, the unmistakable sound of a distant fire truck began to rise in the distance. An actual one, perfectly timed, or perhaps coordinated by a mischievous friend on the city council. The siren grew louder as it rolled down Main Street, turning past the fairgrounds, blaring its unmistakable call. Cupcake's ears perked. The moment was cinematic. The sun glinted off her sequins. A hush fell, and then she sang. It started as a soft whine, rising steadily into a high-pitched melodic wail that rippled through the air like a violin being played by a ghost. The sound looped and warbled, perfectly synchronized to the siren. In the distance, people gasped, then laughed, then broke into wild applause. It was ridiculous. It was glorious. It was Cupcake. She howled like she was born to perform, pacing the tiny stage with deliberate drama, tail held high. Children squealed with delight. Parents recorded frantically. Even the food truck guys took a break to watch. For a full 2 minutes, the howling continued, bending in tone, weaving in harmony with the siren until it faded into the distance. When she finished, Cupcake barked once, daintily, and sat. The crowd erupted. Karen smiled. The rest of the day passed in a blur. People asked for photos with Cupcake. Karen had printed 4 six of her in costume and signed them with a pink paw stamp. Someone offered to buy merch if she ever made it. Kids tried to imitate her howl in a siren pup contest at the fair. Organizers threw together on the spot. Even a local news van showed up, the reporter laughing as she interviewed Karen beside a wiggling Cupcake. "You could have ignored it," the reporter said, "but you leaned in. What changed your mind?" Karen paused, then looked out at the crowd, at her neighbors, at their smiles, at the joy this absurd little moment had sparked. She didn't have to fake anything. "I guess I realized it's not so bad being laughed at, if people are laughing with you," she said. "And Cupcake, she loves the attention. She was born for this." Back at home that evening, after the chaos had passed and the sun dipped below the rooftops, Karen poured herself a glass of rosé and collapsed on the couch. Cupcake curled beside her, finally silent, finally calm. Karen looked at her phone. Notifications piled up. More follows, more comments, more fan art. The most recent remix used her howl to remix the Jurassic Park theme. Karen laughed. "You really are ridiculous," she told Cupcake. "But I guess so am I." Cupcake snorted, softly, half asleep. A knock came at the door. It was Dennis, holding a small gift bag. Inside was a collar tag shaped like a microphone. "Thought she earned it," he said with a wink. Karen smiled, genuine this time. She did. The neighborhood never quite looked at her the same way again, but for once that was okay. The woman, who once filed noise complaints and glared at loose trash, was now the proud manager of Maplewood's first viral sensation. And Karen, dignified, dramatic, driven Karen, had found something better than control. She had found the joy of letting go. And Cupcake? Well, she had found her stage.